Well, it's been a while since we did one of these. Been kind of slacking off on getting this done. I've been too busy with actually working. Well, today we're going to be heading up to Prairie Creek. We're doing shuttling fuel up there for the next 3 days. So we'll have a bulk tank, and fortunately, there's so far the weather's looking good. So I should probably get you guys some photos of it. So I'll talk to you guys in a bit.
There we are, folks. Welcome to the Rocky Mountains. We're just getting ready for our descent into Prairie Creek. We got some low cloud going over here, so we're looking at ways that we're going to be able to stay under those clouds and away from obstacles and follow our approach path on the way down. That's all been briefed for us now, so for the time being, sit back and enjoy the ride.
Autopilot's off.
Check.
I might go in this gap over here.
Yeah, I think you're better going in there.
Stand by.
Check.
Turn the corner right after this ledge, eh?
Yeah, looks like.
Lap 15.
Speed checks.
Gear down. Before landing checks.
Master cautions for the bleed air.
Confirmed.
Big green confirm.
Confirmed.
Flaps are indicating 15 before landings are complete to the line. Target altitude for that ledge on the left is 4950.
Ready.
I guess he's low around the corner still, actually. There we go. That looks good.
Lap 25.
Checks.
Conditioning is full forward.
Leaders.
Low.
Alright, before landings are complete, we're just waiting on your flap 45. Current speed 101 for 91.
Roger.
Pretty much bang on profile. Next altitude was 4450. There's your 4450 crossing. You're pretty much on profile. Next altitude, 3950 as we come over camp here. Or just before camp.
Roger.
Prairie Creek traffic, Tindy 805 is 4 mile final for runway 34. Yeah, just across camp, you want to be 3450.
Roger. I think the wind's picked up a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like.
45.
Flaps indicating 45, and you are stable 93 for 83.
Roger.
Sixty knots.
Control locks on. After landing checks.
There you have it, folks. Under the expert ministrations of Captain Dan, we have put a -7 on the ground in Prairie Creek. All right, guys, we'll see you back in Fort Simpson.
Okay, so I guess I lied to you guys. I was originally going to give you a little bit more as far as for a little tour around Prairie Creek and then maybe one of the departures, but honestly, none of that footage wound up coming out too good and I wasn't too happy with it. So you guys get the cheap discount narration after the fact. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what we saw going in there. So obviously, going into Prairie Creek is definitely a bit of a process. It's complicated terrain. You're landing in the mountains, and the way you're coming onto that, you aren't getting a nice, neat, tidy route up through the valleys. You kind of have to come up and over and then come down. And so as part of how this works out, which you guys should be seeing up in the top corner here in a second, is we have the procedures that we've laid out at Air Tindy for how we get an airplane down into that for an arrival. So we have our profiles that are set up based upon coming into that valley for where we have to start at the first waypoint to come into the valley, the altitude to be at that point in time, and then following our safe descent profile all the way down, so that it ensures that as we make that turn around the corner, we're at the correct altitude to land on the runway. That's where it's very, very important for the crew to coordinate well together so that we have everything loaded into the GPS, that we verify that the route that we're going to be following in is correct, that the first officer is giving the captain the correct altitudes, both for where he's crossing currently so that he knows if he's high or low, and then what his next target altitude is. So if he is, say, running a couple hundred feet high, he knows that he has to get himself down to get back on profile for that. And the idea is that as long as everybody's doing their job correctly, then we get a nice smooth landing, as you saw going into there. And no tour for that kind of stuff is perfect. You can do a bunch of approaches into there and you'll always run a chance of being a little high or a little low. It's never out of ridiculous margins, but it is something we have to consider. The other thing that we have on that chart that you'll see is there's that green area that's on the chart. And that green area is showing us our obstacle clearance for a given altitude, particularly for our engine out procedures, because that is one of the things that we have to factor into when we're going into there, is if we lose an engine, how do we safely get back up and out of the valley, because obviously if that happens, we're not going to be landing in Prairie Creek, at least unless something really, really dire forces us to have to land. But otherwise, it'll be essentially all that happens with the engine out procedure in this case with Prairie Creek is we just continue straight down the valley, and then we have target altitudes to hit on the way out. And with every successive altitude that we go up to, the safe margins on either side of that map get wider and wider and wider until eventually we clear the peaks for the ridge on the other side, and we're able to turn on course to go back to Fort Simpson or wherever we opt to head into afterwards. Simpson being the most likely one because it is the closest. It's only about a half an hour away from where we're landing at Prairie Creek. Now, the other one to factor in is that not every day is nice going in there. Pretty much every day that we were going in, for example, over those couple days that we were there doing fuel shuttles, we were consistently dealing with the weather on the way in. Most of the cases that we had, the first day we were pretty well off. The clouds were high enough that we were able to stay under them, which makes it fairly easy for us to get in. The second day, we actually lost 2 trips in the morning because on our first trip when we went out there, it was looking very, very good in Simpson, but as we got further and further west, the ceilings kept kind of creeping further and further down until eventually they were pretty much lined up just a little bit over the peaks, and it was just this thin layer that you could pass over it, like directly over the mine site, and look down and it'd be perfectly fine. But further back, where we had to make our descent based on the winds and that we're doing, you couldn't have good forward visibility. There was no safe way to confirm that we were in the right spot or that we'd avoid anything. So at that point, yeah, we did just have to pull up, turn around, and come back and wait for the weather to pick up a bit so that we could make another attempt afterwards. And even the subsequent trips, it was very much a similar thing where we would get out there and it was very much just a case of finding a spot where you had enough of a safe distance between the clouds and the ridge in order to get in under it. Because when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, where you have a very challenging descent like that, in a lot of instances, especially the case like this where you don't have an actual IFR approach into Prairie Creek, so you need to be VFR anyways. So at that stage, what we really need to be doing is actually being under the cloud as opposed to being up high for any of that portion of the trip. And we were running into on our third day was almost too much of a good thing in a way. The clouds started off fairly low, and the first couple trips in were a bit challenging, and it was getting easier as the clouds went up. But as the clouds were raising towards the end of the day, we actually wound up having thunderstorms to contend with on the way back. So makes for a fun trip to come around to make the return afterwards once you've done this full day of fuel shuttles, and then you still have to get out from there and pick your way back to Yellowknife. You guys should be seeing another video that's going to be coming up here in a second, and this one will actually show you what happens when things don't line up the way they should. This was from earlier on in the early fallish last year. I guess it'll be late fall. It was November, and of that time of year, the weather just turns to garbage in the mountains. It's really not a good time to be going up there, but they still wanted us out there to pull some mining equipment out. And you'll see as we go in here how we just as soon as we start down, we completely lost visibility. And so in that instance, we knew where we were in relation to the potential obstacles at that point where we initially started to descend. But as soon as we lost that visibility, it was just, nope, we're not going to, there's no point even trying to attempt going down any further than this. It's not safe. And we just just called the missed approach, climbed back out, turned back, went to Fort Simpson, and hoped for the weather to improve. And unfortunately, the weather never really did get better. We never got another round to get in there. We only managed to make one trip that go around. So yeah, you can actually see why coming into some of these places is really, really challenging. The irony is that the strip itself at Prairie Creek is actually not that bad. It's a 3,000 foot, 100-foot wide gravel strip that's not amazing in condition, but it is actually in fairly decent shape, especially compared to some of the places that we land with a Dash 7. It's really all about the approach coming into there that makes that a challenging place to land in. But it's also a really, really cool place to land in as a result of that. There's a lot of interesting terrain around there. And you have the Nahanni Ridge that we cross on the way out there, for example, and that has places like Little Doctor Lake, which is a nice tourist spot. A little ways west of there is the Virginia Falls, which is an amazing waterfalls, and there is some videos of float planes landing there. And then to the south of that, there's also the Nahanni Butte, which is another major tourist attraction that's in the NWT. So you have a lot of really cool geological features, all in a fairly small area, that helps make that kind of trip really, really neat for us. So it is really fun to go out there, especially when you're doing stuff like fuel shuttles, because then you're not doing a lot of heavy lifting or back-breaking work, and it's a lot down to how you and the rest of the crew, in this case the captain, and I, are able to work together and get things organized, and if dispatch is on time with calling people to arrange for fuel on the other end so we can get loaded up and go again. And you can actually get a fair number of trips done as a result of it. We actually did pretty good even with us getting weathered out. We just about got the full amount that they were looking for us to pull out. We bring about 5,000 liters at a time, so we got them gassed up pretty good by the time it was all said and done. But not too sure how long that's going to hold those guys for. We never bothered to really ask on that side of things, but still, yeah, it's a really fun time for that kind of stuff. Next up for me is going to be heading down to Saskatoon for a while for our next contract that we're running out there. See if there's going to be anything worth taking video of while I'm down there. Been to the prairies a couple times and it is kind of flat, but the people are nice at least. So there is that side of it. And yeah, I guess we'll see you guys again on the next one. So take care until then.